Hi, I'm Amy Baldwin. I'm the first year seminar coordinator at the University of Central Arkansas, and I'm going to talk about fostering meaningful connections for our first year students. I'm going to start with sharing some data. So, this came from our data that we collected in the spring about our first year seminars last fall. You can see that students are singing the praises of connections, whether it's faculty to student or peer to peer. And so these in particular talk about how the professor was amazing or the perfect mix of connecting with students, but also there to educate and not just as a friend. They also mentioned that the community that was created, the peer-to-peer relationships that were built, were really important and something that made the course worthwhile. So we're very glad about that. Definitely those two dimensions, peer dimension and faculty dimension, student to student or faculty to student, are the key components of our first year seminars. But I want to also expand that idea to campus, so student to institution and community, student to the world or the region in which the institution resides. So even though we are focused primarily in our first year seminars on enhancing that student to student connection and the faculty to student connection, I just want to share with you that there's more that can be done, not necessarily this coming semester, but something you may want to think about beyond if you teach beyond this fall. I want to share a little bit about some of the research around this. So I know it's very intuitive to think that whenever we're talking about peer-to-peer connections, that they are positive, and the research does bear that out. So I want to just show you that it can increase graduation rate. It can improve continuous enrollment, especially for underrepresented and first gen and low income students. And we have a population of first gen students, about 40% at our institution. So peer-to-peer relationship building is incredibly important for us. And then it can also help students improve their GPAs. And we know that whenever students have a higher GPA, they're more likely to stay, to persist, to graduate, to find employment, to get internships, to go to graduate school. So all of that is really important and definitely is borne out of the research. The faculty-student interaction is also very, very important. And for some researchers, they have determined it's really an essential component of the college experience. A lot of research has shown over the past 40, 50 years that personal interactions with faculty are incredibly important. And if you think back to your own experience, you probably had a professor who served as a mentor and even kind of a friend. Maybe you're still connected with them. And those kinds of relationships are key to student satisfaction, but also student achievement. And notice that the more personal and the more connected you are to the student versus just seeing them during office hours or talking to them briefly after class, the more lasting that result is going to be. Some of the work out of the thriving quotient, Lori Schreiner's work, is really important and helps us kind of put into perspective the importance of faculty-student interaction. So in this particular study that Lori Schreiner and her research associates did, they found that when a student had a professor who cared about them, they had a professor who was excited about learning, had a professor who encouraged them to pursue their dreams, that they improved their odds of seeing their education as being worth it, their odds at thriving at work and not just in the classroom, but after graduation, and their odds of thriving in life or feeling satisfied with their life improved and increased. And so it can be really, really important to foster those connections with students. What's interesting about Lori Schreiner's work is it wasn't just the academic conversations that were driving these kinds of outcomes. It was actually the personal life conversations that happen usually outside of class. What are your dreams? What do you want to do with your life? What do you want to get out of your degree? Those kinds of conversations are what fostered some of the most impactful outcomes. The faculty student connection research also supports some of Schreiner's work. And you can see from here that there's a moderate correlation between students who have a relationship with their faculty member and their course satisfaction. They are more likely to engage in the work later, and they are more likely to be engaged employees. And then if you're teaching in the STEM field, you're going to see that relationship is going to be really key to students who are wanting to pursue a STEM degree. So really, really important, something that we work hard to make sure is a key component of our first year seminars. So how do we do that? One thing I'd like you to think about is doing kind of an inventory in terms of where there could be some additional peer-to-peer interactions and faculty-to-faculty interactions. This comes from a worksheet that I'm going to share below in a link. If you're watching this on YouTube, if you're getting this through an email from me, you're going to see a link to it. But it gives you an opportunity to think about what you do normally and what you could do to enhance those relationships. I am sure everybody starts with some sort of introduction activity, trying to get to know the students, but what else could you do beyond the first day or the first week to continue to foster that? Um, Anytime that you can get students to connect with each other, whether it's think, pair, share, or working collaboratively on things, definitely is going to help foster those relationships and should be part of any class, to be honest. But what else could you do to enhance that or make sure that that is a regular part of your course? And I like particularly number 3, whenever it says students from different backgrounds self-segregate into familiar groups. It's great to honor some of those self-selections at times, but also where could you be more intentional about connecting students who don't normally connect with each other in the class or outside of the class. Think also about how you connect with students, whether it is in class, sharing a quick story about a journey that you had, a struggle that you had, what encouraged you or who encouraged you to pursue your career pathway. Or what could you do outside of class in terms of enhancing that conversation, enhancing that relationship? And I like in particular number 6, we often get focused on talking to students about their performance and not necessarily acknowledging that effort and growth and what is driving some of the work that they're doing. So it is okay to compliment students on, hey, you really worked hard on this last assignment. The grade may not be where you want it to be, but I can see a lot of you in this assignment and how much you've changed over time. Those kinds of things can help foster personal relationships. Um, those two key parts of first year seminar, peer-to-peer, faculty to student. I want to talk a little bit about campus involvement, and it's just to give you some ideas of some other places that you can help students make connections. So again, the research is pretty clear that students who are involved in campus, whether it is through activities or even employment on campus, part-time job, they are going to benefit. They're going to be more likely to be retained. They're going to feel like they belong. And then they are going to feel those effects even after graduation. And so more likely to be engaged at work. So it can be really important to kind of introduce students, especially first year students, to the opportunities that they can take part in on campus. I want us to think a little bit beyond the classroom though, or the campus, and where could we potentially connect students with the community? We do have courses that are service learning. They are specific designation of classes that have a service component to them, and students are working usually together in a group, small group or big group, to complete a task that then serves a community partner. But it doesn't have to be that formal, and students can get connected with community events, community organizations, in different ways if you have the capacity to do that. Certainly, there is a lot there that can help students make connections with what they're learning in your classroom to the real world, and that can be incredibly beneficial for them. So, I want you to think about this as you're planning your course and as you're thinking about things to do differently, perhaps if you've taught it before. Where in your course would it make sense to integrate a connection with a campus office, a department, an organization, a group, or an event? You can bring someone into the classroom, or you can have students go see this person, or you can take a field trip to go see that person. Where in the course would it make sense to incorporate a community connection? In the case of our students, we're in Conway, Arkansas, and so we may be thinking about where in Conway, where in Central Arkansas, that we can make those connections. And then think about what would be gained for your students by intentionally integrating or incorporating campus or community connections in a meaningful way. And you saw the list of things that are benefits. Perhaps maybe there's some other things that you think might be helpful to them. And again, that is not to make you feel overwhelmed by what you need to be accomplishing in the classroom, but these last two connection types are just presented so that you can think a little bit more broadly about how to really foster deep connections with students. So happy planning and good luck with everything that you're doing.